Hello. This is safety concerns and living options. Most people want to live out their lives in their existing home. If you survey people across the society, that's probably what they're going to say to you. But changes that come with age often make other arrangements kind of necessary. Changes in things like mobility and strength, vision, and hearing can all complicate the living situation to the point of forcing a change. Often the question changes from where do we want to live to where do we need to live. And too often, wrestling with these questions becomes so stressful that a lot of people just put them off until, the situation is desperate and they're forced into it. There's lots of different options that are available to people who are leaving their own home. One option might be moving to the home of another family member, an adult child, but there's also independent senior living communities, assisted living communities, memory care facilities, and of course, nursing homes. There's an interesting type of community called a CCRC. It's a continuing care retirement community where you can move in at whatever point you're at. So if you're in independent living, then you come and go and you just have your independent apartment. But then as needs change, you can actually transition to assisted living where you have more assistance with your ongoing daily needs. You can also move into memory care within the same facility. And then later on, if necessary, even skilled nursing is available all in the same campus. So it's a great concept that some of these new places are working into the system. So aging in place is a term that refers to making the home um, so that it is accessible to someone as long as possible through the aging process. But it's an ongoing process and changes over time, depending on things like outside support and health changes and finances as well. The first thing to think about when we're aging in place is the least restrictive setting with both the current and future needs of the person in mind. The least restrictive setting means a person can continue to maintain as much of their independence as possible. If the setting is too restrictive, it actually creates helplessness. So if someone moves into your home and you're doing everything for them and they don't do anything for themselves, they're not required to do anything around the house, that can make them too helpless and dependent on you. But on the other hand, if the situation is unrestricted, then it might become overwhelming for them, and the person might have trouble coping with challenges that are beyond their ability. So we want to look at, just making the right sort of situation for everyone. So first, we're going to look at continuing to live in your own home. Anyone who wants to stay in their own home as long as as while they're aging has to consider some restrictions that come along with age. Most common issues are things like decreased strength and flexibility, which leads to decreased mobility. A loss of vision and hearing can create other limitations to living alone. And some simple changes that can be made are something that every senior should consider. This is not necessarily just for people with dementia, but this is for anyone as they age. So some simple recommendations for maintaining your own home and making it better for you as you age. And the first thing is brighter light bulbs. We've talked in the past about how seniors live in dark environments, and so we need to be able to brighten that up so that people who have dimming vision can see better and they can maneuver around their home more safely. So just simply changing to LED light bulbs can bring that about. I don't think you can even get incandescent bulbs anymore. And the CFLs, the compact fluorescent bulbs, they tend to dim with age, and especially when you first turn them on, they might be very dim and they take time to brighten up. But the LED bulbs are very bright. They use less energy and they're also cooler. So if you had to unscrew a light bulb while it was on, you can do that without actually burning yourself. Using night lights in every room and in hallways is an important thing. If you get up at night, you shouldn't turn on bright lights. That can trick your brain into thinking it's daytime and it's time to get up. Then you might have a hard time going back to sleep. So you want to use night lights so that you can light your way. The bedroom shouldn't use night lights. The bedroom should be very, very dark. Your hallway, your bathroom can have a night light, but the bedroom should be dark. So night lights that are motion sensors are the best thing to have in a bedroom, where once you get out of bed, your feet go down to the floor, that trips it and turns the light on. That's dim so that you can see your way around. That's the best thing to have. Um, Using non-skid surfaces in the bathtub and the shower, of course, removing throw rugs from the house. A lot of people are quite attached to their throw rugs, just adds a splash of color here and there, but they're very unsafe for everybody, not just for the elderly, but for everybody. But as people age, they tend to pick their feet up less high when they walk, and so they're much more likely to trip over those. Another thing would be to replace faucets, the knobs and door handles with the lever style, so that all you have to do is just pull it toward you on the sink, or the strength of the weight of your hand can unlatch the door, as opposed to the knob, if you don't have the grip or arthritis or something, causes pain as you grip something. So faucets and doorknobs with the lever handles. Installing a handheld shower head is a good idea, so that as someone needs to be seated while they're showering, that is accessible and they can move it around on themselves and they're not trying to lean forward and get into the shower water that's coming down. Also, grab bars. Some people are resistant to grab bars. They don't like how they look, or they don't want to feel old because they've got these grab bars, but they are a necessity. And so we have to kind of get beyond some of those stigmas that we think about those kinds of things. And if that can prevent you from falling in the bathroom, then it's well worth having. And also, one more thing in the bathroom is the higher rise toilet seat. The new standard is about 2 inches taller than the old standard. And so it makes it much easier lowering and rising from the toilet. If you aren't ready to get a new toilet right now, you can always purchase a riser seat that actually can attach right to the toilet, just like a regular toilet seat, but it gives that 2 inches of lift, which is very helpful. So let's look at some of the main challenges of staying in your own home. And this is just for anybody. The first would be physical health decline. You just don't have the physical strength, or the mobility. Climbing stairs, different kinds of things become more difficult because of physical health declines. Stairs in a home. Decreased strength makes stairs much more difficult, more dangerous. A lot of falls happen on stairs, can be serious, serious falls if you tumble all the way downstairs. Bathrooms, of course, big challenge because this is where most falls happen. People slip on wet floors. Everyday tasks. As we age, and if we're not aging well, then the everyday tasks that we have to do, whether it's personal care, paying bills, housekeeping, those kinds of things become more difficult for people to do. And then home maintenance in general, meaning the house. Do we need to replace windows? Do we need to have someone come out and take a look at the roof? Who's going to take care of the lawn and those kinds of things if we become unable to do that? Transportation is another challenge. As people age, sometimes their hearing and their vision causes them not to be able to continue to drive. And so there's lots of issues that come along with that. There's always security to think about. When neighborhoods change, a lot of times older people will move out, younger families move in, and if you're left as the only original person in that neighborhood, or all these other younger families have moved in, you don't necessarily have the same relationships with them. Do they know you? Do they know that you have special needs? Is anyone checking on you or finding out if you're okay? So security can be an issue. Meals and cooking. If transportation is a problem, how are you going to get to the store and get your groceries? Do you have the strength to continue cooking, to lift a pan, to cut something open, those kinds of things, to open jars? So meals and cooking can become a problem as we age. And then there's also mental health decline. If your neighborhood has changed and you don't have neighbors that you socialize with, your mobility is not what it used to be. You can't drive. How can you get to the places where you socialize? So people can become isolated and lonely, and depression can develop, and depression can lead to dementia. So those are really the main challenges for anyone living alone in their own home. So let's look at first how we can modify our existing homes to age with us, to allow us to age in place. Um, Staying in your own home might require just some minor changes to your living situation, but it could also involve some major things because of physical limitations that people develop. So consulting a knowledgeable person about this matter is really important. So we want to talk about how to find um, a contractor that knows the needs of seniors. So I want to share um, a page with you. And this is what I want to show you. It's a CAPS certification, Certified Aging in Place Specialist. So this is a certification that a contractor can get through the National Association of Home Builders. So if you go to this website, that is NAHB, National Association of Home Builders.org, and there's also an 800 number, they can line you up with people in your area. If you go on the website, it's a national website, so you'll put in Michigan, maybe Metro Detroit, or put your zip code in there. And what it will bring up is a list of contractors in your area, in your county, in Southeast Michigan, that are qualified to come in and assess your situation, your particular home, and offer some suggestions for how you can make it work better for you. Okay. So the one thing that they're going to suggest is one level living. So this is the main recommendation for all seniors, and it's the trend for new senior housing and construction. And it just includes having the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, the bedroom, the laundry, all on the main floor. And the other thing is at least one no-step entry is recommended. And so, we see a lot of people adapting their homes to this, and that can be something that this CAPS person can help you do. If you're not looking at new construction, but you want to stay in your home, they can offer you some suggestions about how that can be done. If there's existing bedrooms on the main floor, it may be just a matter of converting one of them into a laundry room. If there's no bedrooms on the main floor, an unused space could be converted into a bedroom space, or at least a bed area in a living space. Maybe you have a separate living room and family room. You could convert one of those into the bedroom area. The no-step entry can be achieved by building a ramp on the front of the house, or if you have an attached garage, you could actually install a ramp inside the attached garage if you're worried about the aesthetics of the outside of the house. And because most older people, or a lot of older people, eventually use a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, it might be necessary to widen some doorways here and there, especially something going into the bathroom. When we think about our bathrooms, often the doors open in, and you have to go in and move and close the door around you. Not many of us have bathrooms big enough to roll a walker or a wheelchair into and then close the door. But there's a simple way of rehinging that so that the door would open out and totally clear the doorway. So that could be a simple way to solve that issue. If a first floor bedroom is not an option, then you could think about a chair lift that would be installed on your stairway so that you could sit on that and be lifted up to the upper floor. If your stairway is not wide enough, or if it turns, or just the configuration doesn't work out right, then there's always a lift that could be installed. And in my condo, I already have the place picked out where my lift is going to go if that's what I need, because I have a 2-story condo. Um, but it's like an elevator, but it's not a big elevator with the closing doors like you would think. It is more a hole in the floor and the ceiling, and the lift just carries you up and carries you down. They're not as expensive as you may think. And that could be a really good option for someone who really wants to stay in their home but doesn't have the mobility of making up and down the stairs. But again, the most important aspect to this renovation is finding a contractor who's trained to know what's best for older individuals. So next, let's look at how dementia can complicate all of the challenges that we just went through. Falls are the most serious threat to living alone. If you live alone and you fall, you can be left on the floor or in a precarious position until someone realizes that they haven't had contact with you and comes and finds you. Could be hours and hours. If you live with someone, that may not prevent you from falling, but at least they can get help to assist with, getting you up off the floor, or if you are injured, getting you to the hospital. Um, frequent falling can actually be an early sign of dementia. So if that is something that you are experiencing or your loved one is experiencing, frequent falls, then that could be a red flag and a sign of concern. Physical health decline can also be exacerbated when dementia comes into the picture, because maybe the person is not taking their medications properly. Maybe they are missing doctor's appointments, not even scheduling regular doctor's appointments. Maybe they're not eating well, or there's a lack of exercise because they just are afraid to get out of their house. They feel more secure staying inside, so they don't get out and do anything. They can't remember whether they ate or not. So physical decline happens much faster once dementia comes into the picture, if there's not someone right there watching every move. Stairs are obviously a common area for falls, and because dementia causes imbalance, that can make them even more dangerous. Someone can still have the strength to go up the stairs, but if balance becomes a serious issue, then stairways become an even more serious issue. Bathrooms, of course, as we said, are the most common place for falls. Water on the floor or slippery surfaces, and if you're not outfitted properly with grab bars and that sort of thing, can become very dangerous. Everyday tasks like personal hygiene, paying the bills, housekeeping, those kinds of things, when dementia comes into play, even if the person has physical strength still, those things can often fall by the wayside. And one of the main reasons for that is not that they just don't want to do it anymore, but they might have a hard time following through the complicated tasks that all of these skills sort of take. We take for granted the processing that is involved with all of the things that we do on a daily basis, but there are a lot of steps, and often people who develop dementia, they lose some steps here and there, so they can't complete a task, so they just let it go. And so that can really cause for lots of buildup of things, and things not getting done. Someone who used to be very meticulous about their appearance and their home can turn into a very different type person because they can't complete these tasks. And then, of course, home maintenance is follows right along there. If things aren't done on a regular basis, as you know, a home can deteriorate quite quickly. And maintenance tasks is also part of this sequence, or understanding how to contact someone who can fix your roof, or being able to negotiate through knowing you're not getting ripped off by some company who's going to come and do stuff that you don't need to be done. Hoarding also comes into this daily task home maintenance thing. People often lose the ability to go through their stuff and say, I don't need this, I do need this, where does this go? So things tend to pile up. And sometimes people do just continue to hoard food or newspapers or junk mail. They don't want to part with anything. So that's another very common safety hazard, actually, that can build up in your home when dementia is involved. When we look at security issues with people who have dementia, it's not just, do they live in a safe neighborhood? Do they know their neighbors? Is someone looking out for them? But it's also things like people who have dementia might just open the door to anyone. They might give things away to anyone. They can be an easy mark for people who are scamming. So there's a lot of security issues when that comes in. But also, people who have dementia, 60% of people with dementia will wander. So if there's not a caregiver there to make sure that the person is not getting out of the house and wandering off, or if they do go for a walk and don't return in a reasonable amount of time, alerting the authorities to say, hey, my loved one is out there wandering around. I mean, they may just simply go for a walk, but get confused about where their house is or not recognize their house when they are walking past it. So that's a real issue. And some other security issues are things like fire, cooking on the stove. Do you have a gas stove? Do you have open flame? Might they set something on top of that? But even cooking in the microwave. I know people who have set fires in microwaves, so that can become a big issue as well. Transportation becomes increasingly dangerous as we think about cognitive issues coming into play. When we talk about people wandering, they don't just wander on foot. Sometimes people wander in their car, and they still have the ability to drive. They can maneuver the car fairly well, but once they get onto the highway, they might just keep going and not recognize where they are. Someone can get a very, very long ways away in a vehicle as opposed to walking. And then if they lose the privilege of driving, then that brings along with it its own issues, depression being one of them, but also just how do they get around? How do they get what they need? How can they go where they need to go? Meals and nutrition become an issue because if someone's transportation ability is limited, is someone providing them with food? Are they remembering to eat that food? Do they know, can they tell, has something gone bad, or are they eating bad food? Or are they just remembering to eat at all? So the whole nutrition issue is a big one if someone is living alone. And then there's loneliness and isolation. People who are experiencing dementia know something's wrong. They don't feel like themselves. They feel conspicuous around other people. Maybe they'll say something wrong. Maybe they have gotten some poor reactions by people that they've talked to, and that's scary to them. They might just be insecure and want to stay in their house because they feel safer there. So, but then they become isolated, and a lot of people, it's very common just to self-isolate because they're afraid of the outside world. But that brings on loneliness, which brings on depression, and depression can escalate dementia. So that's another issue. So then we come to the question of, can my loved one with dementia live in their own home? And the short answer is yes, if they have proper supervision and support. We want people to maintain their independence as long as possible. We want them to take care of as many things for themselves as they can, because that is going to prolong their productive life. And if they're happy and safe and comfortable in their own home, then it may be the best place for them. But what has to be in place for that to be possible is that their primary caregiver has to be someone who lives with them or extremely close to them. Their caregiver needs to be someone who learns a lot about dementia and Alzheimer's and has some understanding about what's going on. This person needs to be patient and understanding because they have to help with medical reminders and appointment reminders. They have to assist with finances, if not take that all on themselves. Has to be someone who can hire some outside assistance for household chores or maybe to help with personal care. They have to make sure nutrition needs are being met. They have to provide safety and security and transportation and every unexpected thing that happens with dementia 24/7 for an unlimited, unknown length of time. So if they don't have all of that support and supervision, then living in their own home is probably not a good option. So if we're thinking that's not a good option, then what are their options? Um, Short of having a family member move into their home, there is always the option of having your loved one move to your home because they require 24/7 supervision just to make sure that if they fall, someone is there to alert someone. If they go out of the house to wander, someone is there to know that they went out of the house. So the supervision doesn't mean everything needs to be done for them 24/7, but they need to be supervised. So if that is not in their home with full-time live-in care, be that hired or family members, then bringing them to a family member's home is the next logical option. But it's a big responsibility on the family and it can lead to caregiver burnout. If you are trying to do everything for someone else, manage their whole household as well as your household, or bring them into your household, managing their affairs while they're in, you can see that that can cause quite a lot of disruption, especially for families that still have maybe young children at home. Although it can be the most economical plan, obviously, it can be the plan that leads to the most caregiver burnout. And when we look at caregivers, we know that 50% of caregivers die before the person with dementia. And so your mind might go right to the elderly spouse of someone living with dementia. And that is a big part of it. But it's not just the elderly partner. Often it is an adult child who is very stressed because they're trying to manage both households. They don't get enough rest. They're not being attentive to their own family. They're not going to their doctor's office. They're not taking care of themselves. And so the stress can cause heart attacks and strokes and things like that in people who are maybe only in their 50s or 60s. So we know that being the primary caregiver can be the most stressful situation that you can put yourself into. So when we think about what are senior living options, we know that there is independent senior living. But this is not an option that you would consider for someone who is developing dementia, because independent senior apartments are simply designated. You have to be a certain age to live here, but there is no security. There are no services provided. There is no assistance provided. It is independent living. So that really isn't any different than living in their own home, other than there's more people in closer proximity. And usually the apartments are small. They don't accommodate for a live-in caregiver. So this is really not an option that you would be considering if you're looking at someone who's living with dementia. The next level is assisted living. Assisted living communities are typically quite large, and they give people assistance with their independent living. Okay, they are not nursing homes by any means. People can come and go freely, so they don't have the security lockdown that you would think that someone needs if they have dementia, so they can't just get out and wander. Um, they provide meals, but they don't necessarily know how to accommodate the special challenges for someone with dementia. So the family would still need to be there often, or hire someone that would be covering that level of assistance. Assisted living can do a lot of things for you. Every new level of assistance comes with a rate hike as well, but they do offer lots of things, like it could be changing your bed. If that's too difficult for someone, then they can have workers who will come in and change the bed, maybe wash the linens. You could probably pay to have your laundry done, some of those kinds of things. Obviously, meals can be provided, but assisted living communities would not consider bringing in a new resident who already has existing dementia. That's not what they would be open to. If they don't have a memory care zone in their building, they would not be open to that. However, a number of them do allow a resident who has been living there for a number of years and is now developing dementia. A number of the assisted living communities do accommodate for that. They do allow that person to stay there. However, if their care becomes more than the assisted living community can provide, they would require you to have a family member there all the time, or hire caregivers to come in. I mean, it is your home, so you can hire someone to come in and assist you in your home. But again, it would not be a place where you would want to look if your person already has dementia and you're looking for a new home. Now, a couple of other places to think about. One is called an adult foster care home, and this is an actual home in a neighborhood setting that is designed to care for maybe 6 residents. And it is just a large home, 6 bedrooms. It's typically run by a registered nurse. Not all residents have dementia, but they do have dementia education, and some of them are designed to have only residents with dementia. Some have mixed, and some are designed for just elderly people not with dementia. So that's something that you would have to check out. But they can offer anywhere from minimal to total care. They often develop very close ties with their caregivers. You know, it's kind of family run. In fact, the one place that I know, the mom is a registered nurse and she runs the facility, and her children are there quite often, and they interact with the people and they think of them as grandmas and grandpas. So it's really quite homey and lovely. They have dinner around a dining room table. They all sit around there and they have their meals, but they can be geared toward what their special needs might be. They also offer large decks and backyards so that people can get outside and enjoy fresh air, but it's a very home-like atmosphere. But it's safe and secure, and it has 24-hour supervision. So this is a really great option if you're looking for that level of care. Another specifically designed community for someone living with dementia is typically called a memory care facility or a memory care community. The staff is dementia care trained. There is a higher caregiver to resident ratio, so they have more time to spend with people, and they can assist in better ways. They're typically smaller units than like an large assisted living, but they're comfortable, home-like settings. There's lots of activities and opportunities for involvement and engagement. And this is the important part. Sometimes in assisted living, there's entertainment and things like that, but if it's not engaging to someone with dementia, then it doesn't do that much good for them. Where in a memory care community, because they're specifically focused on people who have dementia, then they can gear all of their activities in that sort of way to be able to engage those people. Again, there's the high level of security and safety for the residents. They are locked units. They can't just walk out the door. They're typically built in such a way that there is a courtyard so people can freely go in and out and spend some time outside when it's nice, or even when it's cold, walk around in the fresh, cold air, but so that they have access to that on an ongoing basis where it's enclosed and they're not worried about them getting out and getting lost. A memory care community is very aware of nutritional needs and mealtime challenges, and they can assist with all of those things. So the family can be assured that their loved one is really getting the best care that they can get. Now, the last option for senior living, of course, would be your standard nursing home model, which is a large facility typically based on a hospital model, which means long hallways, room, hospital beds, not living room, apartment type rooms. But the 24-hour skilled nursing is available. They have residents who do not have dementia, and so dementia residents might be in a secure wing that is just part of the nursing home. They're aware of mealtime challenges. There is a lower staff to resident ratio, though, so people don't get as much hands-on attention. They don't get quite the engagement of activities that they would in a memory care facility. The staff's not always trained in dementia care. Hopefully the ones in the dementia unit are, but that's not always true either. It is the most expensive option of all, but the reason why a lot of people end up in a nursing home as opposed to some of the other ones is because when the money runs out, you can qualify for Medicaid. And so, if there is no money left, the state can take over, and that is a place that you would be able to live. All of the other options are private pay. And so that is, of course, something that has to go into the figuring of where your loved one would go. But finding the right living option is more about the type of care than the type of the facility. And, one nursing home is not the same as another nursing home. One memory care is not the same as another memory care. And so you really have to do your homework and, visit these places and find out what they have to offer. You want to see people engaged and loved and cared for. Dementia training is a must. No matter where you go, if they have quality dementia training, you can get quality interaction with your loved one and quality care for them. So it's not just what the place is called. They have to have the right things going on inside. And you don't want to leave your search for living options to the last minute. You need to be aware of the communities in your area and where they are. Is it around where your loved one currently lives or where you live? And sometimes it maybe the place that's closest is not the best option. Maybe it is going to be a drive for you to go and visit, but if that's a better place for them to be overall, then that is better. So you go on visits, you check it out, you find out all these different things ahead of time. You even can get on waiting lists. You can always say no. If an opening comes up and you're not ready, then you can say no and you can drop back down on the list until maybe a little bit later on. But it's also good to enlist the help of a professional. So I want to share the screen again and give you some numbers for some professionals that can be very helpful. So these are two companies that have worked with Hope Dementia Ministry in the past, and we had our live sessions. They would come and set up vendor tables at these sessions and talk to people about their services. They are like a senior living realtor, so to speak. It's their free services to you as the client. You go to them, they'll sit down with you and look at your finances, look at your geographic area, and they can help you make the decision about what's the best place for your loved one. They will even set up tours and go on tours with you. They know the ins and outs of all of these places. So these professionals are the ones that you really want to rely on. So parents changing spaces, and there's their number for them, and assisted living locators. So if you've ever heard of A Place for Mom, which is a national um, assisted living service, locating service, that's kind of what these are, but these are local Michigan um, companies that can help you with that. Okay. So the other thing that I want to say is include your loved one when you're visiting in these living communities, because part of making a smooth transition is making them part of it. Going on tours to get their impression, because your impression of something is not necessarily going to be the same as what their impression is. And what appeals to you may not be what appeals to them. And I walk into some of the communities and they're really gorgeous and very modernly decorated, but that might not feel warm and cozy to someone else. So if your loved one is able, and if they are early on in their dementia, being really proactive about, what happens if you can't stay in your own home. If someone isn't there to take care of you, what would you like your options to be? Let's go look at some things. Some people are very, very open to doing that. And so you want to try to put that out there for them. And so, just being ready, being prepared, understanding that if your loved one falls and goes into the hospital, this is one of the most common ways that people change their living situation, because they have been living independently, they fell, they injured themselves, they had to go to the hospital, maybe they even had to have surgery or something. When they're released from the hospital, maybe they go to rehab, but you only get a certain amount of days there. And then they're going to say to you, okay, your loved one is going to be released in 3 days. They can't go home alone. Where do you want them sent? Are they going to come to your house? Do you have a place in mind? So often people are totally scrambling to figure out where their loved one is going to go because they haven't done any of that legwork ahead of time. So it's really something to think about, to maybe go out and do some visits, get your initial impression about what it's like. Check out some of the new things. There's lots of new things going up all over the place. You probably drive by some of these places and don't even realize it. So making yourself more aware of that and being proactive about it so that you have a good idea about where you want them to go when they either become too much for you to handle anymore, or they have fallen, become injured, and absolutely not something you can handle. So to be prepared ahead of time is what I want you to be. So check out those numbers, give them a call, let them know that I referred you, and that could be a good starting place for you.